Hello, trading has closed on April 14th, 2016. Let's go over yesterday's calls. The first one was I had conflicting indicators from which I concluded we should have a gap outside of the day's range. Well, we traded outside of the day's range briefly in the first 5 minutes, but that's not what I usually mean by a gap, so I'm going to call that one a miss. When that doesn't happen, the next most common event is that we close a little changed, and we get the large move the day afterwards. Well, we certainly closed a little changed, but even though I've said that many times in the past, I didn't say it yesterday, so I get no credit. We had a target of 2073.99, became nowhere near it. Well, we came close, but it didn't print, I guess. And finally, I said I looked for an 8-point drop. Well, 8 to 10, if you look at futures, we had 8 points exactly. Well, that's nice, but as I've said many times, futures don't count. This was only 6 and a fraction. That's not 8 to 10, so that's a miss too. All in all, not my finest day. We have some targets from the MEJT system for tomorrow. 2087.52 and 2080.54. MEJT says a lot of these moves are false moves. I have to say that in the last month and a half, we've had an unusually large number of failed targets. This happens once or twice a year for a month or two. When it happens, you have to take all these targets with a grain of salt. I'd particularly be cautious about this higher one unless we gap up, because you can leave failed targets at major changes in trend. Well, we gapped up, hit a series of new highs, and couldn't hold on to any of them. Unless we gap over this high, or at least trade over it promptly after the open, that's a very negative pattern. This is a pattern which tends to close at the high of the day. When that doesn't happen, it usually leads to further weakness unless tomorrow's open or the early trade promptly takes out this high. So the bulls need to go over this high promptly. We're still on a demarked sell signal. I think it's in danger of failing because of a strong breath, but it hasn't failed yet. This was the diamond on stilts pattern I showed yesterday. The actual high was 1948.20. If it were 1948.97, you would hit this on the nose. For something going nearly 300 points, I think a fraction of a point doesn't make much of a difference. So we're still at a target of the pattern. This is a different diamond on stilts. Here's your stilt, here's your stilt, here's a diamond. Here's the middle of the diamond and the ends. Set that at 61.8%, and that's today's high. So we have strong resistance at today's high, and we have a pattern which requires us to overcome that resistance to avoid a significant drop. I think tomorrow's open tells the tale. If we gap over this high or trade over it significantly early on, we've overcome strong resistance, and the rally continues. But if that doesn't happen, there's a good chance of a pretty big drop starting from right about here. And that's today's call.